Keanu Reeves once said something about Jesus that stopped people cold. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't rehearsed. But in just a few quiet words, he revealed a vision of Christ so raw, so human, it stunned even longtime believers. This is not a story about religion. It's a story about recognition, about a moment that changed Keanu's perspective on life, suffering, and compassion. About how one unexpected encounter reshaped the way he sees Jesus, not as a distant figure in stained glass, but as someone walking beside us in the mess of everyday life. And it all started with a stranger. And 5 haunting words. He's dodged bullets in The Matrix, fought off armies in John Wick, and ridden through time in Bill and Ted. For decades, Keanu Reeves has captivated audiences with his stoic strength and on-screen intensity. A man of few words, always calm under pressure, always one step ahead. To the world, he's the ultimate action hero. But off-screen, there's another Keanu, a quiet soul whose life has been shaped as much by pain as by fame. A man who walks to work, gives away millions, and offers his subway seat to strangers without expecting a thank you. This contrast between his roles and his reality has made him one of the most beloved and mysterious figures in Hollywood. And just when we thought we had understood him, Keanu revealed something even more unexpected. In a recent interview, he opened up, not about his latest film or a red carpet moment, but about something far deeper. His reflections on Jesus, not in a preachy, headline-grabbing way, but in a moment of sincere vulnerability. Keanu shared a story and a perspective that stopped people in their tracks. What he said wasn't loud, but it echoed. And that's where our journey truly begins. Not with gunfire or special effects, but with a quiet encounter that changed him forever. It wasn't on a movie set. There were no cameras, no stunt doubles, just a quiet street corner in Los Angeles. Keanu was walking alone, as he often does, hood pulled low, blending in like a shadow. That's when he saw him. An older man, unshaven, dressed in torn clothes, holding a cardboard sign that didn't ask for money. It simply said, "I am Jesus, can you see me?" Keanu paused. Most people passed by. Some scoffed, others turned their heads, but Keanu stood there. Then he walked over, and he listened. For nearly 20 minutes they talked, not about theology or religion, but about kindness, sorrow, the weight of the world. The man never raised his voice, but every word he spoke held a strange gentleness, as if he were offering a kind of peace Keanu hadn't known he needed. It was a moment out of time, simple yet profound. And though Keanu never claimed the man was Jesus, what he experienced couldn't be easily dismissed. He later shared that he didn't know whether the man truly was who he claimed to be, or just someone broken and wise. But the experience felt like a mirror, a divine interruption, a moment that planted a seed of faith not in church doctrine, but in compassion. What struck Keanu wasn't power or miracles, it was presence. And from that day on, his view of Jesus changed. No longer a distant, untouchable figure in stained glass, but a fellow traveler, gentle, wounded, close. That encounter stayed with Keanu. It didn't spark a conversion in the traditional sense, but it awakened something. A quiet reverence. A hunger to understand not religion, but the heart behind it. And in a later conversation, unprompted, almost in passing, he said something that stunned listeners. A quote that was soft in tone, but thundered in meaning. "If Jesus were here today," Keanu said, "I don't think he'd be in a palace or behind some golden altar. I think he'd be sitting with the broken, with the lonely, with the ones we pretend not to see." There was no dramatic pause, no attempt to sound profound. He just said it, and let the silence carry its weight. In those few words, Keanu painted a picture of Jesus that felt radically human. Not a distant deity demanding worship, but a present friend, compassionate, wounded, walking beside us in the dust and noise of life. It wasn't theological, it was relational. That vision of Jesus, as someone who chooses humility over status, who sees the invisible and lifts up the rejected, mirrors how Keanu lives his own life. Quiet, grounded, deeply aware of the suffering around him. And maybe that's why the quote resonates so deeply, because it doesn't just describe Jesus. It reveals something sacred in Keanu himself. Keanu has never labeled himself. He doesn't wear his beliefs like a badge. But if you look closely, through the grief he's endured, the silence he embraces, the kindness he gives, you'll see it. Faith, not in a system, not in rules, but in presence, in love, in the kind of Jesus he described, humble, healing, human. Keanu's life has been marked by loss. The death of his best friend, River Phoenix, the stillbirth of his daughter, the tragic passing of his partner, Jennifer Syme. For many, those events would have closed the heart. But somehow, Keanu remained open. When asked how he copes with pain, he once replied, "Grief changes shape, but it never ends." And yet, behind those words is a resilience that can't be explained by willpower alone. It's as if something, or someone, has quietly held him. And that quiet strength has shaped the way he moves through the world. He gives without cameras. He listens without interrupting. He shows up not as a star, but as a servant. You won't find Keanu preaching. But in his simplicity, in the way he treats strangers with dignity, and lives without vanity, there's a kind of gospel being lived out. It's not loud, it's not branded, but it's real. And perhaps, in a world drowning in noise, that's the kind of faith we need most. In a time when religion often feels weaponized, where belief is sometimes twisted into division and noise, Keanu's quiet reflection lands like a whisper of healing. He didn't quote scripture. He didn't claim divine authority. He just offered a glimpse of Jesus that felt reachable. A Jesus who chooses eye contact over judgment, who sees the forgotten, who shows up not in cathedrals, but in conversations on street corners. And maybe that's why it matters. Because in Keanu's voice, we don't hear doctrine. We hear longing. We hear humanity. We hear a man who's been through the fire and somehow still believes in light. His quote has quietly rippled across social media, comment sections, interviews, not because it was controversial, but because it was true. It reminded us of something we all carry inside, the desire to be seen, to be loved, to be forgiven. And so the real power of Keanu's message isn't just what he said, it's what it unlocks in us. A call to compassion, to slow down, to see people not as problems, but as sacred, to believe even when it hurts, that love still matters, that kindness is strength, that Jesus, whether in a homeless man's eyes or a grieving actor's whisper, is still reaching out. And maybe, just maybe, he's asking the same question. Can you see me? Keanu Reeves didn't set out to preach. He didn't plan a sermon. He simply noticed someone and chose to listen. In doing so, he reminded us of something sacred. That faith isn't always about having the right answers. It's often about asking the right questions. What if compassion is the real sign of belief? What if Jesus is closer than we think? Not in perfection, but in presence. Keanu's words invite us to reflect, not just on who Jesus is, but on who we are becoming. So now we ask you, what does Jesus mean to you? Have you ever had a moment, unexpected, quiet, maybe even strange, that felt like a glimpse of something greater? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if this message moved you, if it gave you something to think about, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes the most powerful sermons don't come from pulpits, they come from people. Quiet, kind, honest, just like Keanu.